With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos Daf Kuf. We're going to have more applications of the concept of by Hoitzah, that Bo'in Ka'achas, as we started the Moededik Asugi yesterday, the Boyas of Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to bring in the Machlokes between Almeir and the Chachamim that we have in Masechtas Eruvin regarding mezuzah. The words are Choykikin Lahashlim or not, whether we carve out to complete or not. We're speaking about the chiyuv of a mezuzah. Many people think it's on a house. It's not exactly in a house. The chiyuv of a mezuzah is in a doorway. And there are definitions of that doorway. It has to be at least 4 tefachim wide. It has to be at least 10 tefachim tall. If there is a doorway that has the height 10 tefachim tall, but it doesn't have 4 tefachim all the way to the top, in the bottom of the doorway you have the 4 tefachim width. But when you go up, it's like it arches in. But the wall, if you were to carve out, there is place in the wall to carve out the 4 tefachim wide doorway. Rav Meir says that choykikin lahashlim, yechayev v'mezuzah. Chachamim say you don't do choykikin lahashlim. We'll see how this applies very similarly to laws regarding hoitzah. We're going to be speaking about the law of a mound. In other words, the way you make a reshus hayachid into a reshus hayachid, as we have been learning, by Shabbos, reshus hayachid doesn't mean it belongs to someone individually. It's not private property at all. For kinyanim, it's that way, right? Chatzar koina, it has to be mine. It has to be reshus hayachid. And Bava Kama, we're going to have a whole different way of understanding the reshus hayachid. For Hilchas Shabbos, for hoitzah, reshus hayachid can belong to everyone. It can be city hall. If it has mechitzos, halachic mechitzos that are 10 tefachim tall and it's 4 by 4, it's a bona fide reshus hayachid. What happens if there is a mound around an area? In other words, there's an incline. So there is a certain point that if it's very inclined, we view that as a mechitzah. Because since it's going to be difficult to use that mound as ground, it's called loy nicha tashmishta, it becomes into a wall. We're going to learn about those halachas. We're going to have a Mishnah speaking about if a person throws an object and the wind gets involved in taking the object to the entire 4 amas, b'reshus harabim, or the opposite, the wind prevents it from going 4 amas. Is there a place where the wind and myself, so to say, will achieve the proper hoitzah? Will I be chayiv? Will I not be chayiv? We're going to go over to the status of a karmelis. We're going to say that the sea has a status of a karmelis, even though you can argue why would that be? Again, if the basin for the water is 10 tefachim deep and it's 4 by 4, why would it not be a reshus hayachid? We'll speak out why not. But the fact is that a sea or any body of water is a karmelis, and the question will be if a person is on a boat and they are, for example, traveling on sweet water. They're in the Tefilla, and you want to take water from the waters into your boat. The boat is a reshus hayachid. From a karmelis to a reshus hayachid, isur derabanan, what would be the way that would permit you to do that? Or in reverse, if there's wastewater on a ship and you want to throw it out, you can't throw directly from a karmelis, from a reshus hayachid into a karmelis midrabanan. What will be the solution for that? And a lot more. Let us start. We left off on Daf Kuf Amud Aleph, 8 lines from the top of the Amid towards the beginning of the line. Amar Abaya. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakolim v'dvarim. All right, Freilach. Amar Abaya. Boir b'reshus harabim. And it's amuk asara u'rechava shmoina. So it's double the width that is needed to create a reshus hayachid. And v'zarek l'toichem machtzeles. You throw inside the spit a mat of woven reeds. Chayiv. Why are you chayiv? Because you threw it from a reshus harabim and it landed in a bona fide reshus hayachid. Chaver atkan, there's no chiddush. We're building up. However, what happens if you take this mat, chaver, imagine it, and when you throw the mat doesn't land flat, the mat lands standing up. Not only does the mat land standing up, but it lands mamash in the middle. Now the boir is 8 by 8 exactly. I know that a mat is very skinny, but it takes up space. So now that it landed standing up, neither side has a full 4 by 4. Vaited boim ka'achas. If you say it landed first, when it landed, there was a Reshus HaYachid. Now, it separated it. Now there's not a Reshus HaYachid, nishtahen, nishtahin. If you say boim ka'achas, here, that will cause a kula. Because that means that, there's no Reshus HaYachid. The mat is standing. There isn't any side that has the 4x4. Okay, so Chilka b'machzeles, so the boya that Rabbi Yechanan had that we learned about yesterday, he didn't know. Abaya knows. Abaya says pater. Abaya says we say boyin ka'achas. Now let's add another detail. Just come back to what we learned yesterday, right towards the end of Pei of Tzaddik Tes Amud Beis. When we recorded the Mishnah of throwing something sticky against the wall, we wanted to know whether it becomes part of the wall, because the case of Rabbi Yechanan was throwing earth in a pit. Does it become part of the ground? So the Gemara used the words mevatalei. If you're mevat, means if you plan to leave it there, then it becomes part of the pit. Now over here, leaving a mat standing and mitten a psaboir, lav dafke, you're going to be mevatal it as much as you would be mevatal earth in the bottom of the pit. So says the Gemara, la abaya, the pshitale, even in the case of machzeles, that he says that not only boim ka'achas, but boim ka'achas has to do also with the fact that you're mevatla mechitza. That means you plan to leave it there. Because if you wouldn't plan to leave it there, then you can't say it becomes part of the walls of the pit. Why is it the walls of the pit? So if by the mat you say that unless we know otherwise, it becomes part of the pit, kolchchein, that in the case of Rabbi Yechanan, by the chulya, by the chunk of earth, the mevatla mechitza. However, according to Rabbi Yechanan, who asked the boya, Dimi boyale, by chulya, he didn't even know. Pshita over here by machzeles, the loy mevatla mechitzta. Pashit, because how would you know unless the guy who threw there said otherwise? Why we would not assume that you're going to end up leaving it over there. And that's just pointing out the chiddush of Abaya. It's not only does he not have a boya, he says boim kiachas, but he's very liberal in the application of you being mevatalit in the boyd, which is taka why it becomes part of the boyd, and now you lost the status of Reshus HaYachid. And again, amuka asara urchava arba, right? The minimum size Reshus HaYachid. And it is Malaya Mayim, it's filled with water. Now the last sugi we learned yesterday, which was important, turning to the top of Kuf, is that Akira means taking something from a stationary position. And Hanacha means placing it into a stationary position. So we mentioned that if something goes on top of water, water on water, it becomes all one water, and the bottom of the water is laying on the bottom of the holder, of the basin. But like the nut, if it floats, it's not called hanacha. Here, if you threw something in the water, and the Rishonim say you threw a rock in, the rock landed to the bottom. So it landed, it had a hanacha. So it says the Abaya that you're chayiv. Now what's the chiddush over here? The chiddush over here is that even though the pit is filled with water, so one might have thought that the pit doesn't have a depth of 10 because it's filled. No, water doesn't fill it up. So it has to land on the floor, but when it lands on the floor, we say that it landed in a Reshus HaYachid. However, let's make a contrast. Malaya Peris, if you have a pit filled with produce, with grain, it's more substantial. And you throw something in it, you're pater. Why are you pater? Because it didn't land in a Reshus HaYachid. Now, if you threw it from 4 amos away, then you carried 4 amos b'Reshus HaRabim. But if you were right there, even though the grain is in a pit, so what? Now that the grain is in the pit loses the status of a Reshus HaYachid. My tama mayim lemevatla mechitzta. Gewaldig. However, Peris miyem mevatla mechitzta. That's the word. Now, Tosfos has to point out, just to make it a hemshech, if we know that you do not plan to leave the Peris there, coming back, then it will not be mevatla mechitzta. But we assume, he's saying that produce belongs in a pit. People used to store produce, putting it in the ground. That's why it's considered bottle in there, because you do plan to leave it there for a long time, and that takes away the mechitzta. Tanya Nami Hachi, the Fedish. Now the Tanya Nami Hachi is not the Negei Peris, but the Chiddush that Mayim is not Mavatzel the mechitzta, that Azoyrek min hayam li isratio. If you threw something, you're in the sea, and you throw directly on a highway, because it was common that people had highways that go on the side of the sea. We're looking for a Reshus Harabim, so it's a highway. So you're going to be pater. Just to know, pater means in not mutter. Pater because the yam, as we'll learn more in Amud Beis, has a status of a caramelis. No, because, okay, I'll get to the Reshus Harabim in a moment. Shlomo is asking whether the beach is a Reshus Harabim. Here there's a highway on the side of the waters. Rab Shimon Omer that im yesh b'makim shezarek amayk asara v'rachav arba'a. But if you have, now this is a huge chiddush, in the sea, a body of water has a status of a caramelis. We'll speak that out in a moment why. But if in the bed of the water, sometimes there is a hole in the ground, in the seabed, it's an unusual hole, and that hole in the water, you're already going down a little bit, goes down 10 and it's wide 4 by 4. So Rab Shimon holds that area has a din of a Reshus HaYachid. And therefore, if you threw from there, you're going to be chayiv, because the Reshus HaYachid to Reshus Harabim. So what do we see over here? The last words of Nashi before the Mishnah, that we learned from Rab Shimon, that the mayim lemavat lemechitztam. Now, Bekitzat, I want to say the following. Just Negeh the sea, and it's Negeh for Amud Beis as well. It's also a lot Negeh Benegeh Eruvin. Just to know how things work. As we will learn in Masechtas Eruvin, and how this is a halacha lamaisa today in most large cities where Yidden live, that there is a city Eruv. The challenge in a city Eruv is that we follow the Prima Gadim, and according to some Paiskim, no one can debate with that, even though there was a discussion between the Chazon Ish and the Prima Gadim, that we cannot put a Tzuras HaPesach Mechitza around a Reshus Harabim. It will not work. If you have a biblical Reshus Harabim, the way we're learning, how do you make a Reshus HaYachid? It doesn't have to be private property. It has to have mechitzas of 10 and 4 by 4. How do you define a mechitza? There's different types of mechitzas. So there is a concept of you simply making a Tzuras HaPesach, which is a beam on one side, a beam on the other side, and a beam on the top. And even if there are no hinges, we'll learn all that in Eruvin, it's called a proper mechitza. So we follow the concept that if you have a biblical Reshus Harabim, this type of mechitza is not a mechitza. Since it doesn't inhibit people going back and forth, doesn't stop the flow of traffic, it's not called a mechitza. So, and being that all of the big cities, when we make a Eruv, a city Eruv, we are using a lot of this Tzuras HaPesach type of mechitza. If not, the city, the Goyim would not allow you if you're going to put a proper wall. So how can you b'chal make a Eruv in a large city when we go by the fact that if that mechitza doesn't stop the flow of traffic, it's not called a mechitza? Which is why every large city that makes a mechitza, before they put the mechitza up, the first step in making a city Eruv is by determining that this place is not a Reshus Harabim, it's only a caramelis. For a caramelis, a Tzuras HaPesach is good enough of a mechitza. It will make the caramelis into a Reshus HaYachid. Now that's a challenge, because now you're living in we're living in Los Angeles, you're living in New York, you're living in Sao Paulo, in large cities. How are you going to make that a non-Reshus Harabim? So one of the solutions will be, let's go back to any city, let's go to Manhattan or Brooklyn and Queens, that's surrounded with a body of water. Surrounded by a body of water, as we'll learn later in this Amud, that if the decline is that within 4 amas it goes down 10 tfachim, that's the key. That's the correct. Within 4 amas, it goes down a height or goes up height of 10 tfachim. That is viewed as a wall. So, and that's a proper wall. And again, it can be a public area. You can have millions of people, but it doesn't matter. If there's a real mechitza, not a Tzuras HaPesach, then it's certainly not a biblical Reshus Harabim. It's going to be a caramelis, because any area that's around it, it's called a karpef. If it's not hukaf ledira and it's very large, that has a din of a caramelis. That's fine. What am I saying all over here? That a body of water, theoretically, if it has an incline, should be a Reshus HaYachid. So how does it become why does it a Reshus? And we're using it for mechitzas, because there is walls, and we're learning in our Gemara right now that the water, we don't view it now that it's flat. It's not flat. The water is not batal. It's not mabatal the mechitzas. So the reason why a body of water, even if it's in a basin that has walls, because there is a decline, and there's 4x4, you kidding? It's the Hudson River, whatever the rivers around Manhattan, or a sea. Since it's difficult for people to use the top of the water, you can't stand on water, you're going to float down. That in itself takes it away from it being a Reshus HaYachid. It's taka mechitzis. It takes away the biblical Reshus Harabim. Don't forget, Carmelis is only a Darabanan, but it becomes a Carmelis. And indeed, any body of water has a status of a Carmelis. And the Chiddush of Rab Shimon here is that if in the water itself, there is a blue hole, it's called, sometimes in these beautiful places, because when you look from the top, there's such a protrusion downwards that it's gavaldik. He says that area does assume a status of a Reshus HaYachid, which is a big chiddush, and we're just proving from Rab Shimon that water is not mavatzel mechitzas. Just quickly going back to the Eruvin, the challenge by Eruvin, when you're using the seabed walls to make it into a mechitza, some suggested that during the winter, if you live in the Europe where some of these rivers freeze over, when it's ice, it is mavatzel mechitza. And there's a whole back and forth, and these are old shilas regarding Eruvin, and that svara is at least rejected by many, since ice naturally becomes water again, and when there is water, the water doesn't clog up the walls. Okay, Chevra, it's late, let's go, move on. Hazoyrek arba amras b'koisel, we quoted this Mishnah yesterday. We're speaking about a person who's standing even only exactly 4 amos away. So he's 4 amos away of a wall. He's in the Reshus HaRabim, and the item that he throws hits l'mayla masara tvachim. Again, the Havamina in the Gemara, in the Havamina was that it hits it and it bounces back, which will be a problem, because if it bounces back, then it makes the hanacha within daladamas. But that's not the case. It's stuck on the wall, but it's stuck l'mayla masara. L'mayla masara by Reshus HaYachid. Reshus HaYachid is oila ad l'rakia. Or Reshus HaRabim, as we continuously learn, only is it a Reshus HaRabim up to 10 Tfachim. So if it's stuck above 10 Tfachim, Kizorik Ba'avir, and it's mamash, nothing happened. It's a Reshus HaRabim to a Makim P'tur. Lamata Masara, Kizorik Ba'aretz. And the din is that Azorik Ba'aretz, Arba Amas, Yechayiv, that's a Isu D'Oraisa, as we learned, Gemara Gemida Law. It's halacha l'meishim esinei that's a tulda of haitzah. Now, the Gemara is referring back to the Reisha. The Reisha says when you throw arba amas b'koisel, you're kezoydik ba'avid, and it's okay. But again, the havamina is that it ricocheted back. For halei nach, it didn't rest 4 amas away, and the Mishnah concludes that it has to be 4 amas for you to be chayiv. Rabbi Yechina, no, the Mishnah is b'dvelo shmeina shaninu. It's a sticky fig cake. It's stuck on the wall, and that's the case of the Mishnah. So there is a hanacha. We never view the vertical wall as a Reshus HaYachid, even if it's thick, because again, it's standing, right? You only look at a horizontal platform as a Reshus HaYachid. So the question is, it's over the ear space. If it's over 10 Tfachim, it's Makim P'tur. If it's under 10 Tfachim, and it's adjacent to the Reshus HaRabim, it has the din of a Reshus HaRabim. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Amar Rav Chia. Zarek l'mayla masara, if you threw above 10, V'holcha v'nacha b'chur kol shehu, and it rested in a crevice in the wall, and the crevice doesn't have 4x4. Now, my friend, it's 10 tfachim off the ground. It's okay. It's 10 tfachim off the ground. It's 10 tfachim off the ground, and therefore, what? If the crevice would have 4x4, it would be a Reshus HaYachid, and therefore you would be chayiv because you're throwing it from the Reshus HaRabim to Reshus HaYachid. Why would so? But it doesn't have 4x4. It's not a Reshus HaYachid. Nevertheless, the chiddush is that this is connected to the machlokes of Rav Meir and the Rabbanon, that we have a Masechtas Eruvin regarding mezuzah, that Rav Meir, as we spoke at in our intro, that subscribes to choykikim lahashlim. So if you have a doorway, the chiyuv of a mezuzah is on a doorway. You can have a home and it won't be chayiv a mezuzah if there's no halachic doorway. So there's 10 tfachim height, there's 4 tfachim at least for the first 3 tfachim up. There has to be a minimum amount of 4 tfachim width, but as you go higher, it starts to come in, right? It's an arch. But if the wall, if you were to chisel out the stone, there would be enough wall for you to have a doorway through. Rav Meir says you chayv to put up a mezuzah. So here also, this crevice, if you would be able to chisel out in the wall and make a 4x4 tfachim, imagine, we view this crevice now as a Reshus HaYachid, gavaldik. And according to the Chachamim, that they say, Ein chaykim lahashlim, it doesn't become a Reshus HaYachid, and therefore, loi mechayiv. Tayanami hachi, Clearly in a brayse, Rav Meir says Yechayev because it's considered a halachic reshus hayachid, and the chachamim are paitrin. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav Teil hamislaket asara. The law of a mount. This is so important. All right, the mount is going up. If it accumulates, hamislak, it means you gather. If it accumulates 10 tfachim height. And how long does it take for you to go up or down 10 tfachim? Within 4 ames. If it's incline, shkoyach, if you walk for 2 blocks and you find yourself on a higher or a lower level, that's not a wall. That's an inclined or a declined ground. But if the mound is so steep that within 4 amas you go up 10 tfachim, that's halachically considered a wall. Again, this concept, since lo nicha tashmishta, on such an inclined or declined earth. And therefore, whatever is on top, if it's 4x4, is a reshus hayachid. V'zorik v'nachal gabav yechayev. And tanya nami hachi, mavui sheshava l'toichai. Right? If the level of the mavui is the same, but the mavui is on the same level, but then asa midroin l'reshus harabim, but it slopes towards the reshus harabim. Oy shaval reshus harabim asa bin l'toichai. In other words, the reshus harabim and the mavui are not on the same level, and there is a mound, right, a hill up or a hill down, going which either direction. And the mavui, we're speaking about a location that's closed with mechitzas from 3 sides, and an area that's closed from mechitzas from 3 sides. Mida ayraisa is a reshus hayachid. Mida rabbanon, they were afraid since one side is open towards the reshus harabim, people might carry towards there. So therefore, they said again, hilchos eduvim, speaking about a city eruv, that you need to do a very limited mechitza at the side that is open from the mavui towards the reshus harabim to remind you as a heket, this is where it ends and that's where the street begins. And for that you need to have either a lechi, which is a side post, or you have to have a cross beam going on top. And that is enough of a 4th wall. So says the Braisa that the incline itself is the wall. So it doesn't even need the lechi or the kaira, farvas, because that hill, that mound, as long as it gathers, it goes up or down 10 tfachim within 4 amas, it's considered avant. So therefore it's walled off from all 4 sides. Now the Tanakama did not say how inclined does it have to be. Rab Chanina, the Tana, is not arguing, he's just clarifying. Hitaka brings a halacha from carrying mireshus harabim to reshus hayachid, but he's bringing it in the braisa of a lechi or a kaida just to clarify that what type of incline hill do you need to have that's separating the mavi and the reshus harabim. It has to be hamislaket asara mitoich arba. Beautiful Mishnah. ZAJAC says the Mishnah lotoich dal adamas. The koyach that I had was that this item is only going to go for 2 amas. Guys, I'm standing in the reshus harabim. However, there was windy, and the wind grabbed hold of this item. Vinis galgel, it's swirling it in the wind, and where did it land? Chutz ledal adamas. Says the Mishnah Potter. Guys, we're going to learn a huge chiddush in the Gemara. Not so simple. Now, without going further, you can say, okay, I understand, because my koyach didn't take it 4 amas. The problem is that I made an akira, I propelled it, it had a hanacha a couple of amas later. We'll see in the Gemara, not so simple. Now, the seifa is the opposite. Chutz l'dal adamas, the koyach that I put into this object was it's going to fly for 4 amas. But here it went against the wind. And then it's galgal l'toich dal adamas chayev. And when you learn the seifa, you already see that you need to have a it's like a Rashi and Chumash. You need to have a Gemara on the Mishnah. Who cares how much koyach I put into it? If I threw it and it did not go 4 amas, chayiv? Strike the Gemara on the Sefer of a holy noch. So therefore, Rabbi Yechanan clarifies, and his clarification also goes on the Reisha. Says Rabbi Yechanan, focusing now on the Sefer of who shenach al gabe mashu. What happened was, I threw it 4 amas. It went 4 amas. But it has to normally land. It landed on a garnished. It landed on something that normally would not be considered something substantial. Rashi says even more, if the wind was not swirling it, but the wind was in that moment, it kept it stationary within 3 tvachim off the ground. Stationary, not draying. Beyond 4 amas. And then the wind brought it back. Here is where we say that I'm going to be chayiv. Regularly, Galga means it's rolling, but here it means it's rolling in the wind. And now the same thing is in the Reisha. That the chiddush of the Reisha is that if I threw it, so say all of the Rishonim here, and I only put enough koich for 2 amas, but the wind carried it for 4 amas, I will be chayiv chatos. Wow. What happened in the Reisha is that I threw it, and by 2 amas, it landed for a moment on Gaba Mashu. Then the wind carried it further. My action ended when there was a hanacha. A hanacha al Gaba Mashu is called a hanacha. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah here. Tanya nami hachi, zarek chutz l'dalet, v'do chafatu haruach, v'chnisatu, and it brought it in to within 4, af al pi shechazra v'yitziatu, even though it at the end, after it rested for a moment, it went further out. That's when I'm potter. But says the Braisa, achozatu ruach mashu, af al pi shechazra v'chnisatu chayev. But if I threw it and it was chat by the wind, but it landed for a moment chutz l'dalet, even though it's swirling, in other words, it's not stationary properly, but it did land mashahu chutz l'dalet, and the wind brought it back in. Here, that's the vart of the Seifa. That's why I will be chayiv. Okay. Now says Amar Rava, Toich Gimel Rabbanan. If you remember the beginning of this Perek, right? Daf Tzadik Vav. Machlekes Rabbi Kiva and the Chachamim. Whether we say Kluta Kamishahuncha, and the Chachamim do not subscribe to Kluta Kamishahuncha. We actually had a Braisa on Daf Tzadik Zayin, if you remember, that say that even the Chachamim that do not subscribe to Kluta Kamishahuncha, but if it's Toich Gimel Tvachim, Lavud, then they say it's considered Hanacha. Rava disagrees with that. Now, how can Rava disagree with the Braisa? That's a big question. Rava is saying that according to the Chachamim that don't go by the concept of Kluta Kamishahuncha, Tzarech Hanacha al Gabe Mashu, even if something comes within 3 Tvachim from the ground, and it's twirling, it's not called at rest, or it's moving, it's flying over, it's not like I spoke out if the wind is mamish holding it in a spot, that's an exception. But if it's twirling or moving, even Toich Gimel, it did not yet rest. And Rashi writes 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid a big statement, a big nafkamina. Lamai nafkamina in a normal case. So Rashi reminds us that if a person does an act of hoitzah, for them to be chayiv chatos, it has to be b'shoigig mitchilase va'at soifai. Being that the definition of hoitzah is akira and hanacha. So if I, God forbid, I threw something b'rishus harabim. When I made the akira, I forgot that I can't carry. Before it landed, I said, oh, it's Shabbos. I won't be chayiv chatos. Because by the hanacha, I'm aware that I'm doing something wrong. What happens if it's already within 3 tvachim, it's less than 3 tvachim off the ground, and I say, oh, I can't do that. So Rav is saying that I won't be chayiv chatos. If you're going to say kluta kamishahuncha, at least when it's in the lavud area, so it already landed. The fact that I realized before it physically touched the ground, it doesn't matter. The hanacha happened b'shoigig. Since Rav is saying that l'Rabbanan, you need hanacha, it has to be al gaba mashu. But before it physically touched the ground, even if it just touched it by a drop, without any physical contact, there is no hanacha. So if I remembered that it's Shabbos before that happened, I will be potter. Now, Yosef the name of a kamal Allah shmaitza. This din of Rava that the Chachamim that argue with Rabbi Kiva on the Mishnah, the Chachamim that do not subscribe to Kluta. Even Toich Gimel, you also don't say Kluta. Amar le'Ravina le'Mereimar Chaver Daf Kuf Amid Beis. Ooh, why did I need to have you to say that? Lav Hainu Masnisin. Isn't this our Mishnah? When our Mishnah said it in, and the Sefer didn't make sense, why would you be chayiv? And on that Rabbi Yechanan says V'hu shenach al gaba mashu. The fact that Rabbi Yochanan needed to emphasize that the chiddush of the Mishnah is that you threw it, it touched the ground and it came back. It touched the ground. Why didn't Rabbi Yochanan say it came within 3 tvachim of the ground? The fact that he did not say that is a raya that even if it would have come within 3 tvachim of the ground, it's not called nach at all. So that's already clear. Amalei, to which he responded, no. Rabbi Yochanan's statement in the Mishnah has nothing to do with Rava. Rabbi Yochanan was speaking about an item that's misgalgel. Misgalgel means it's either twirling or at least it's moving. It's moving not down, not gravity. There is taka, we don't say kaluta. Misgalgel kamrat. Misgalgel in sefer lenuach. The fact that it's moving, it's not going to rest in this space. Of course you don't say ki'ilu nach. But without Rava, I would have thought aval hai. When I throw something, there's no wind. It's about to land because that's the trajectory. That's where gravity is taking it. Here you would have thought, kivin the soifer linuach, you know exactly where it's going to rest, and it's already within the 3 tvachim. Lavud. Aflagav delay nach. Maybe the Chachamim will be minded that in this case, yes, command the nach dami. And again, therefore, like Rashi gives the nafkamina, and therefore, if it's command the nach, then if the person, when it entered within 3, they didn't know he had a Shabbos, and then they chapped at Shabbos, they will be chayv chatos, because it had the hanacha already b'shoigig. Kamash Malan Rava, that l'chachamim, we don't even say klut in this case. It's only resting when it hits the ground. And if you remembered before it hit the ground, indeed you will be exempt from a chatos, because you didn't have shoigig from the beginning until the end. Okay, next Mishnah. Hazoyrek bayam, as we mentioned, a yam, whether it's the big sea, whether it is any body of water, a sea, even though, speaking about a sea, that goes down. It goes down for 10 tfachim. That's important. It's a sea that has 4x4. Theoretically, you would argue, well, water is not mavatzel the mechitzes. We just had that in Amud Aleph. So b'meila, it's a reshus hayachid. It's not a reshus hayachid because it's difficult. It's called loinicha tashmisha. So it's not a reshus hayachid. The Chachamim said it as a din of a karmelis. So azoyrek bayam, based on that fact, and you threw something in the sea, even though it went for amis, right? If it would have a din of a reshus harabim, then you would be chayiv. Since it is din of a karmelis, you are pater. We're not saying muter because midrabanan, a karmelis is like a reshus harabim. Weiter. Im hayedekok. What happens if you have a shallow pool of water that's going out of the body of water? And again, it was common for people to have highways on the sides of a body of water. They would travel there. So we're speaking about a highway. Just to know, a highway, going back to Hilchas Eruvin, according to many poskim, this whole concept, do you need to have kayotz in Mitzrayim or not? Many poskim say that a highway is a reshus harabim, period. That's not a reshus harabim. Everyone is traveling on it. And you have a highway on the sides of the water. A little bit of the water goes into the highway. So it says the Mishnah that hazoyrek l'toichei daladamas chayev. The rekok becomes part of the reshus harabim. It's going on the street. Everyone is going through it. V'kamo hu rekok mayim, less than 10 tfachim. The moment this little protrusion of water, the shallow pool, is 10 tfachim deep, even if people go through it, no, it's not a reshus harabim. It has a vant. So loinicha tashmishta makes it from a reshus hayachid into a karmelis, correct? But it's never a reshus harabim. If it's less than 10 tfachim, that's where we say, since people are going through it, it's as a din of a reshus harabim. From another part of the sea. From one part of the yam, from karmelis to karmelis. Now, the Mishnah repeats itself. Rekok maim v'reshus harabim mahalechas boi. Since people walk through it, it loses the status of a karmelis. It becomes part of the reshus harabim, and therefore, if it travels for a full 4 amos, you're going to be chayiv. Mamish, the Mishnah repeated this din twice, and the question is why. So, the fact that the Mishnah repeated this din twice of a reshus harabim passing through the rekok, you know why it's needed to tell you hakamash malon. The first time the Mishnah mentions this din is to tell you hiluch aladei hadchak shmei hiluch. Right? That's very important. Even though it's inconvenient to walk through it, since people walk through it, it's a reshus harabim. And the reason why the Mishnah repeats this din a second time is to teach you a law from inference that tashmish aladei atchak lo yishmei tashmish. Rashi gives a great example. If you have a reshus harabim, okay, and you have the wall, and 9 tfachim above the ground, there's a protrusion. We learned that protrusion is part of the reshus harabim. Even though normally something that's above 3 tfachim, that's not 4x4, is a makim ptur. Since everyone uses that type of protrusion, if they have a backpack and they want to adjust it, they lean on it, they help it straighten it out, that's called, the rabbim is being mishtamish with something that's available to them. It has a din of the reshus harabim. But what will happen if you have a boir? The boir is not 10 tfachim deep, it's 4x4. If it would be 10 tfachim deep, it's a reshus hayachid. If it's 9 tfachim deep, what status does it have? So the din is, if it's 9 tfachim deep and it's not 4x4, it's a makim ptur, right? But people are using it. But then it's not comfortable to use a pit that doesn't have 10 tfachim, because if you want to put something in there, you are afraid, you don't want it to protrude upwards. That's called a bird b'reshus harabim. You don't want people to trip on it. So 9 tfachim is called tashmish aladei atchak. People use it, but they're not that comfortable using it. Do we say that since people use it, it has a status of a reshus harabim? And the answer is no. Only hiluch aladei atchak, like this rekak, has a status of a reshus harabim. But that pit, since even though people use it, but it's inconvenient for people to use it, it doesn't have a din of a reshus harabim. And that's why the Mishnah repeated the din twice. One to tell you the din directly, and one to make the inference that tashmish aladei atchak is not called reshus harabim. Problem is, the Mishnah did not need to give the same example. The Mishnah did not need to give the same exact example of you have a shallow pool of water that's protruding outwards. Don't say another din of hiluch aladei atchak. Why the same case? So the Gemara answers to tell you that this din of if you have a shallow pool of water, it was obviously common then. It means you had highways on the sides of waters, and you had the water sometimes going out. If people walk through it and it doesn't go 10 tfachim deep, it's part of the reshus harabim. It's a chiddush. You have to know that both b'yimais hachama, it has a din of a reshus harabim, and b'yimais hakshamim, even during winter, it has a din of a reshus harabim. And v'tzricha the Tanach havamina hanamil b'yimais hachama. Since people are hot and they want to cool off, so many people walk through water just to cool off. So it was more commonly used. Davidi inshi de mazgei, people are going to walk through it. Farvas la'akurei nafshayu avol b'maisak shamim. Since people are cold and more people avoid the water, maybe it doesn't have a status of a reshus harabim. It can have a status of a carmelist, but it's not going to have a din of a reshus harabim. V'yashmini b'maisak shamim, I would say maybe the opposite. Are people concerned of getting their shoes, their pants, their jalaba dirty? If it's dirty anyway, things were dirtier, things were muddier, given the metanfi, anyways, everything is soiled, to walk through it. But maybe when someone is clean, they will hesitate to walk through it. And again, the vart will be that if people don't really walk through it, it's called hiluch aladei atchak, it shouldn't have a din of a reshus harabim. So in both cases, it does have a din of a reshus harabim. Abaya Amar, Rabbi is not arguing, he's giving another way of approaching it, that the reason why the Mishnah has to mention the same case twice, it's right? If the pool, we're speaking now about the width, if it's not for amas, if it's very wide, right, then akufi makvale, then people might walk around it. In other words, when you walk through a body of water, like how much water is there? If a little bit you walk through it, if it's already very wide, more people walk around it. The more people walk around it, the less of a status of a reshus harabim it should have. So Kamash Malan, even if it's for Amos wide, it still has a din of a reshus harabim. And the third approach, Rav Ashi Yamar, Itzrach. Sakalai dechamina, Hanamina hecha dahava dalid. Right, here we're speaking about 4 tfachim. 4 tfachim means that we're speaking about the depth now. So how deep is it? So will people try to jump over it? Or no, fakert, how narrow is it? How narrow is it? If it has 4 tfachim or more, people have to walk through it. But you would think, it's not even 4 tfachim, it's not even 4 tfachim. Even if you're hot, you're not going to cool yourself off in this water. And if it's such a narrow strip of water, people will jump over it. Most people taka wood. Mifsi'e Pasilei. Yet is the Mishnah Machadish, since some people do not jump over it, it still has a din of Reshus Harabim. And v'azar Ravashi l'tamei, Domer Ravashi, Hai man dezorik v'noch aguda de gamlo. If you have a bridge, we're speaking about a bridge that is at Reshus Harabim. And not today's bridges. And those bridges, they were made out of planks of wood. And you're going over something. What happens if one plank is loose? Some people are afraid. So many people would jump over that plank. So says Ravashi, even though most people will jump over that plank, since people also step on it, that plank, that little piece of the bridge, still continues to have the din of a Reshus Harabim. And therefore, if you throw and it lands over there, you're mechayiv. Sharei rabim boikin boy. Boikin means people pass through it. Enough people pass through it and not jump over it for us to consider that part of the Reshus Harabim, mamish like the case here of the Rekok. Okay, final Mishnah that we will learn today. Says the Mishnah, Zoyrik min hayam le'yabash. If you throw anything from the yam, again, the yam, any body of water has a din of a karmelis. Biblically, if the incline to the basin goes down 10 tfachim within 4 amas, so it's 10, the chitz of 10, 4 by 4, Reshus HaYachid. Midrabanan, the yam has a din of a karmelis, because it's difficult to use that space, because there's water over it. So if you throw from the yam to the yabasha, or from the yabasha to the yam, a boat is a bona fide Reshus HaYachid, because it's 4 by 4, we're speaking about if it's 4 by 4 tfachim, and the walls of the ship are 10 tfachim. So the Reshus HaYachid to a karmelis, right? Or even from one boat to the other. Now one boat to the other, we'll get to that in a moment. Does it belong to one person? Does it belong to 2 people and you made an eid of chatzeris? We'll get to that in a moment. Point of the Mishnah is that the yam is a karmelis. So the Reshus Harabim to a karmelis, or vice versa. A boat, the Reshus HaYachid to a karmelis, in all these cases it's atzal midrabanan. Now from one boat to the other you are also patir. Pater because midoiraisa, Reshus HaYachid to Reshus HaYachid. However, sfinois, keshurois, if the 2 ships are bound to each other, which means there is no gap in between them, and they're tied, so they're not going to drift off, then you could be metaltal one to the other. And let's add, if they belong to 2 different people, then you need an eid of chatzeris. Like we keep on mentioning that Shlomo HaMelech was misakin, that even from one Reshus HaYachid to the other, if they don't belong to the same ownership, even if I own that with you in partnership, but I own this boat by myself, I need an eid of chatzeris, but an eid of chatzeris will be effective. Chiddush of the Mishnah is that if an eid or keshurais, if they're not bound to the other, afal pisha mukafis, mukaf is by trumas, you have to give it min mukaf. Mukaf means they're close. If they're not bound, even if you made an eid of chatzeris, even if they belong to the same person, you can't be metaltal one to the other, because it's very possible, it's on water, it's moving. I'm going to pass something, it's going to fall into the yam. Carrying from a ship into the yam is the isur midrabanan. So you don't say it's a gzeira l'gzeira. No, the chachamim didn't want you to carry from one ship to the other if they're not bound one to the other. All right, so now that we established that a boat is a Reshus HaYachid, now that we established that the body of water is a karmelis, what's going to happen? 2-way street. Either if you're going on a sweet body of water, you're going in the Kinneret, and you want to have drinking water, how will you be allowed to bring the water into the ship? Karmelis to the Reshus HaYachid. How, if you have wastewater on the boat, how would you throw it overboard when you're going from a Reshus HaYachid to a karmelis l'choura? All of this will take you into an isur derabanan. So begins the Gemara. Itmer was stated. And you have a svina. Rafuna says that all you need to do to be allowed to bring water from the Kinneret into the ship, really, he holds it's Bechlal, not an Isser. It's a karmelis, the Gemara is going to address that. You have to make up Seheker. You should remember. That sometimes there is a problem. All you need to do is Moitzin Hemenu Ziz Kolshu, have a little rod that protrudes over the water. It's lehekeda, it's like a lechi, and then you can bring in water. Umemale. However, Rav Chizda and Rabba Barafuna say no. They both say oisa mokim arba'a umemale. Guys, whoever learned Eruv in last cycle around, that was the closest that we got to it. Listen to this. You make a box. The box has to have 4 walls. According to Rashi, the height of the wall doesn't even have to be 10 tefachim. So the box is open from the top and the bottom, but you have 4 by 4, and you put it over the wall of the ship, on top of the water. It doesn't have to touch the waters. So we say, here we say, good achis. We make believe as if the walls go down and touch the waters. So therefore the water is inside that mechitza, is keilu in a reshus hayachid. You are carrying from a reshus hayachid to a reshus hayachid, even though you can't say it really belongs to the same ownership, because that's like, for everyone, the boat is only yours. Here they allowed you to do it. But you have to make this mechitza. It's called makoim arba. It has to be 4 by 4. You got it, guys? Between either walls, think about a cardboard box, but you take out the bottom. So it's through. But you have walls on each side. Now, some Rishonim will learn this more in Erev and hold, no, that this box has to have 10 tefachim. Since it has 10 tefachim, so then it's l'chora, like a reshus hayachid in there. Only then do you say, good achis, the walls go down. But let's leave it the way we're learning over here, that you don't even need the 10 tefachim height. Now, Rabbi, yes?
Is the box actually in the water?
No, it's not in the water. The top of the water. Remember, we're going to learn a lot more about these concepts, but let's leave it right now. So now, says the Gemara, Rafuna is the makel, right? Rafuna says, no, moitzi amenu zuiz kolshu. You have to have some sort of heker, umamali. But hold on, how can he say that? My friends, yam is a carmelis. Midrabanan, you cannot carry from a carmelis into reshus hayachid, into the boat. So he says, moidedik. He says, carmelis, ma'ara mashchinan. When you measure, where exactly is the carmelis? You know where the carmelis is? Not the top of the water. The seabed. The seabed is a carmelis. And really, like we mentioned, the seabed is 10 tefachim deep. Go use the seabed. It's hard. Has a din of a carmelis. Now, here's the vort. That when the Chachamim added the reshus of a carmelis, they compared it in some aspects to a reshus harabim, lekula. Just like a reshus harabim only goes to 10 tefachim, a carmelis only goes up until 10 tefachim. So if the seabed is a carmelis, and you're going up 10 tefachim and beyond 10 tefachim, it's no longer a carmelis. What is it called? It's called a makim ptur. So you're taking from a makim ptur into a reshus hayachid. There's no problem with that. Va'avir makim pturu. And hold on, if that's the case, why do you even need a ziz? Beautiful. And really, the last narrow line, ubedin hu the ziz nami loy leboyi. Ella ki heicha de lehavelei akeda. Here's the chaim. Everyone knows a sea is a carmelis. No one knows that the lumdus knows really the carmelis is the seabed. So you make a heket, it's good enough. However, right, the first white line, they both hold no. That the reason why you have to make because they hold carmelis, a sea, body of water, whether it's the ocean, whether it's a lake, it has a din of a carmelis, but from the top of the water. Carmelis misfas maya mashkin, and measure the top, not the bottom. Why? And why is that? Hold on. Everyone agrees that a carmelis only goes up 10 tefachim. Because because the entire body of water is viewed like thick earth. Going back to Amud Aleph. Not here, we don't say the svara we learned in the beginning of today's daf. Here we say that the water is like an extension of the earth. It's like when we learned when the paytas fill up the void, there's no more. So it's one chunk of sea, and all of it is a carmelis. Now, if you go 10 tefachim above the water, that's already a makim ptur. But the waters are a carmelis, and therefore, which still we're relying on the heter of good achis. We make believe as if the walls go down to the ground with all these heterim. Then let's chop a few more lines. According to that, that he's the lenient one. The Amar, but that is all based on the fact that the carmelis is only the seabed. Hold on. Who told you that you have 10 tefachim of water until the seabed? Maybe the ship will be going in very shallow waters, and maybe the top of the water is within 10 tefachim. Zimnim de lakasor v'komentalta mekam l'shus hayachid. So Amalei, Rafuna responds that Gomrinan, I know how ships work. Even the little shipalach of those days. The ein sfina mahalechas b'pachas masara. If there's less than 10 tefachim of depth, a boat cannot travel there. Ay v'hoy moirsha. Mordechay's part of the bow. The part of the bow in front of the ship that is above the water. That the front, maybe the ship is going into shallows, and maybe the ship itself won't go that close because it doesn't want to hit the ground. But the top of the ship, where the Mordechay is, it's less than 10 tfachim, and maybe you're going to draw water from there, and then the ziz doesn't resolve. You're violating Isur Derabanan. So answers the Gemara, Amar Rab Safra, no, that even these ships, goishashe. Goishashe means probers. Goishashe means they were sailors. They were people that were making sure that even the furthermost front part of the ship, the bow, doesn't go in a place where it's so shallow. According to the other two Ameroim, which is Rab Chizda or Rab Bar Rav Huna, that they say Oise Makim Arba Mamale. Now I have a problem. Atkan, we're speaking about getting fresh waters in. Now the question is, how do you get rid of the dirty waters? So according to Rav Huna, it's not a problem. Just throw it overboard in the side where there's a ziz. But now that you're saying you have to use that box, so you would say you would pour it through the box. Even if it's not touching the walls of the box, it's disgusting. It's not nice. If you have this whole halachic rishus, you want to use it to clean waters. If you're going to use that same place to pour out dirty waters, right? And it's disgusting. So Shlem is asking, so make another box. We're trying to figure out if you don't need to make a special exit box. So he answers, for that Yataka don't need anything. All you need to do is the Shadalei Adafna, the Sfina, pour the Shoifchin on the walls of the ship. 1 second. If you pour it on the walls of the ship, it's going to trickle down into the waters. Now I get it, guys, that the mechitzas, what's the din of a mechitza? We learned that yesterday. Remember the walls that are around the Rishus HaYachid, if they make the Rishus HaYachid, it's Kal V'chomer, they are Rishus HaYachid. The walls of the ship is the Rishus HaYachid, but it's going to go down into the water. And so, your koyach, it's not direct, but it's through your koyach. So we'll stop over here. So the Gemara says that koychay bekarmelis like gazru, indirect transfer biblically is prohibited. But if it's to begin with a karmelis, right, we're not worried. You pour it on the sides of the ship, God willing, to be continued.